Hey everybody, the December 2022 Roundup is brought to you by Fun Again Games. And Happy New Year everybody. Hopefully you had a good 2022. Hopefully you will have a good 2023. And maybe we're going to start that out by telling you about a whole bunch of games that we played in the month of December. Jen and I got 21 games to the table, which means we ended strong, and I'm about to count them down for you, starting with our least favorite, ending with our most favorite. But before we get to that, I've got a little bit of something from the contributors. You may not have heard from them much in December. They kind of took the month off and went their own way. Doesn't mean they stopped playing games. So I think we've got some video from Shea and from Kimberly. They're going to tell you about some other good stuff that you might be interested in the future. So without any further ado, Shea, take it away.
Hey folks, happy holidays. So I didn't make any videos for Rahdo this month. I've been really busy on a project for my own channel, but I did go to PAX Unplugged and I played a lot of great games while I was there. So I actually played so many games that I don't really need to talk about all of them, which is why even though these games are going to be ranked, these are basically the cream of the crop for me. So every single one of these I would recommend. At the bottom of my list, we've got Sea Salt and Paper. This is a set collection game with some really adorable art. It's all origami themed, and it's got the sort of standard kind of set collection aspect to it, where you're trying to get a handful of really good combos of cards, but it has a really interesting mechanic whereby any player can end the round sort of whenever they want, and they can choose whether they end it immediately or they let everyone else have a turn. And if they let everyone else have a turn, there is a higher risk of someone else getting the last cards that they need to have a better hand of cards that round, but if you still have a better score than everyone else, then you get better rewards. It was a really interesting system. The reason it's at the bottom of my list is because I only got to play like one round of it. I didn't get to play a full game, but I really want to try. So Sea Salt and Paper was my number 5. So my number 4 is a Japanese game called Roulette-Taking Game. Sort of a play on the trick-taking genre, because this is a trick-taking game that is also based off of roulette. You're not spinning a wheel and rolling a ball or anything, you're just playing cards, but you are using the roulette betting table to figure out what you are going to, how you're going to score at the end of the round, because what you're betting on is what card will win at the end of a full round of playing through the, I think, 36 cards in the deck. And each card in the deck is based off of one of the 36 spots on the roulette wheel. Oh, probably 38 then, because there's also the 0 and the double 0 and some other things. So it's a really fascinating take on the trick-taking genre, and it had some really interesting interplay between the cards that you're playing and the betting system, because every time you won a trick in the middle of the game, it allowed you to place a bet. So you want to win tricks so that you can place bets, but then you also want to be placing good bets. You want to be placing bets that you think are actually going to pay out, because you are still betting on what card is going to win the last trick. So it had a really fascinating concept, and I really enjoyed playing it. The design of it was very minimalistic, which I kind of liked. It was kind of good. It also was a little, just the fact that it's just called Roulette-Taking Game, it was a little silly to me, but I thought it was really cool. And definitely if you like trick-taking games, especially interesting takes on it, absolutely check that one out. My number 3 was a very strange game called KuZOOkA. And I had never heard about this. I had just randomly was asked to play it, and I was like, okay, sure, I'll try it. And it had this kind of Candyland looking lane of spaces, but what the game was really fascinating. And the concept is you are animals trying to escape from a zoo, and you are working together trying to make an escape plan. But the way that you make this escape plan is by collectively having, cards of the same color. Everyone's gonna get, cards of multiple different colors, but you can't talk to each other about what you have. So you're trying to sort of bet on what you have the most of. And this ends up playing out like a cooperative version of Skull, which was very fascinating to me. So you'll have this, on this map, all these different spaces. Different spaces will have 1 green, 1 red, 2 blue, something like that. So on each turn, you'll place a little token on one of the spaces, and that's saying, I think collectively we can get 2 blues out of all of the cards that we all have in our hands. And the other person, next person might see a blue in their hands and they think, okay, well, if they have at least 2, I probably have 1 more, so we could probably get to 3, so I'll go to the next one. Then the next person, maybe they don't have any blues in their hand, but maybe they have like 4 reds. So it's like, okay, well, I can't go all the way to the 4 red space because that's too far along. You can only go by segments. So they'll go to like, I'll say 3 red, and then maybe we'll continue that way. But you're trying to reach that like consensus without ever actually telling each other what you have. So that was, I thought, really cool. And then there's some little extra bits where if you'll get pretty far, but you won't reach it to the end. So at one point, someone will call off the plan, and depending on how far you got, you'll sort of level up, which will get you more cards and some like random or some wild cards that potentially have. And then some of the cards that you'll be working with will just be face up, kind of like Texas Hold'em. So you know that those cards are going to be included in your play. And then different animals that you play as have different powers. So it was just a really interesting game. It was a lot more engaging than I thought it was from looking at the game, but I definitely recommend checking it out. I don't know if it has the staying power of some other games, but I was definitely interested the time that I played it. So KuZOOkA, it was my number 3. Now my number 2 was a game that I didn't actually play at PAX Unplugged, and this is the game that I have been kind of immersed in this whole month because I have been making a tutorial for it on RTFM. I was commissioned by Ager Games to make a tutorial for a game called Europa Universalis, The Price of Power. And this is a big, grand strategy 4X game set in medieval Renaissance Europe. Now, this is based off of the Europa Universalis series of computer games, these grand strategy games in the style of like Europa Universalis. There's also Crusader Kings and Stellaris, that kind of grand strategy games, like a step up from like Civilization and that kind of stuff. Not games that I've generally been interested in on the computer game, but I got a chance to play it in the board game version and make the tutorial for it, and I have really gotten into it. It's an enormous experience, and this is coming from someone who loves Twilight Imperium. This game was a lot, but it was so engaging that after playing through it, after sort of muddling through the first game of it with my friends, we all were like, okay, we want to play this again for sure. And on top of that, there's tons of different scenarios that you can play as, even though each scenario, it's not that it follows the same route, but has the same like setup, and you sort of feels like you're starting in the middle of history, because you are. It starts off in like the 1400s, and the different European powers have settled in certain ways. So you always have the same setup depending on your scenario, but there's a bunch of different scenarios, so you can all try different things. And it just has a lot to it. It is, political intrigue. It's also a lot of warfare. It's also a lot of exploration, and there's just a ton to it. So if you're looking for a huge grand strategy game that can go from like 2 to 6 players, this is a big one to check out. And depending on when this video comes out, I may or may not have a tutorial that has just come out, or maybe will come out very soon about it. So that was my number 2. My number one game that I played this month is called Endeavor Deep Sea. Now, this was a prototype, which is, I think, telling as to like why this is so high on my list. This wasn't even finished, but I had so much fun playing it that I had to include it in the list, and I had to put it at the top because it was just so entertaining when I played it. This is a sequel to Endeavor Age of Sail. I haven't played that version of it, but from what I understand, the mechanics of it are somewhat similar, but the gameplay ends up being very different. For one, the theme of it is completely different. You're not exploring, it's not, that kind of colonization aspect of it, which some people had some issues with, rightfully so, I think, but this is completely different. This is underwater exploration and conservation, and it's all about exploring life, diving deep into the sea, and recruiting specialists to help you do that. It has a very engaging engine building system whereby every turn you're getting a new specialist that can help you out. It gives you new actions you can do, but you're also bumping up a lot of different tracks that will help you in certain ways. That allow you to dive deeper into the ocean, or be more effective when you're working your conservation efforts, or allowing you to engage with more specialists as you're going through. It was a very satisfying combo building kind of system, and I'm really excited to see how it works when it's fully fleshed out. When it's fully, I shouldn't say fleshed out, it's very close to being there. They just had to work on a little bit of balancing for the different mechanics, but it's coming to Kickstarter early next year, and I'm really excited to see it when it does. I think it's going to be a really cool game. So that was my number one, and those were the top games that I played this month. So that's all from me. Happy holidays, everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Hey everybody, Kimberly here with my December roundup, and I have to say, I didn't have any run-throughs air in December, but boy have you got some really great games coming up in January and February from me. I'm just going to start with a handful of those. The very first one is Ynaros Fallin, and that is a dueling game that has more than meets the eye. So it's not just a big push and pull and kind of like a punch game. There's so much more strategizing and planning that goes into it, along with some really great set collection and special power activations. So definitely keep your eye out for Ynaros Fallin. And the other game of the lighter fare is from 25th Century Games, and it's Donut Shop. And that game is going to be one that keeps coming out for me just because it's really fast, super shareable, and delicious looking. So in Donut Shop, players are just going to play down a card that has 4 different donuts depicted on it to a central playing area. And then you're going to try to box up those donuts. And you want to box up a bunch of donuts at once because it gives you a whole big payout. But it's really hard because every different donut type in your box requires an order card that matches that type. So it's a really lovely light game that's super shareable and again delicious. So those are coming up in January and February, along with another game that I'm excited to share, which is the expansion Idavoll for Nidavellir. Now, Nidavellir is just a stunning game. There's already been Thingvellir as one of the expansions, and Idavoll is now out. And I will be sharing that expansion with you, what it does, how it changes the game, how it adds to it, and all sorts of lovely things that will take you deep into the dwarven mines with that lovely artwork. So those are the 3 games I've got coming up in the next couple months, but I also wanted to share with you just what I'm up to in December. I've been playing a whole lot of games, and there are some that have kind of captured my attention that I didn't mention on my top list of the year and on my channel just yet, though. These are probably coming very soon on my channel. I am kind of enamored with Carnegie. And I thought I would be. I really did. I even said so in my top 10 for 2022. I had not had a chance to play it yet, but I thought that it was going to be something that just made my brain happy, and it does. There's this very interesting pairing of actions in a central playing area that one player gets to activate. And it means that they are selecting the action that's going to happen and the location or the donation track that's going to be triggered. And that pairing comes randomly at the beginning of the game, but players can see the tracks. And so there's this really fascinating start player choice that affects everybody else at the table. And then there is a player board that's individual, and you have workers that you're sending out to do particular jobs and tasks. And you are essentially trying to donate as much money and raise as much money as you can, being like a philanthropist like Carnegie. So that game to me is a heavier game that is super capturing my heart. I really like it. I think you probably know what I liked the most of last year was Lacrimosa. If you want to check out my video review of the normal gameplay and the solo, please check that out. It is coming out on my channel Friday of the week right before we start the new year. I don't know what date that is, but it's the very end of December. So if you want to check out more about what I thought about Lacrimosa, please check that out. And then there's a light game that I want to share too. This is called Next Station London, and this just made a bunch of top 10 lists that I was watching, and I got it and played it last night, and it's really delightful because I really like Get On Board, New York and London. But this one is a draw. You flip cards and you draw with colored pencils, and you are going to be making tracks in a grid. And hopefully your tracks, well, I mean, you can't cross each other across just like straight empty area, but you want to meet them in stations because that's going to earn you points, and you want to cross the river, you want to cross the Thames. So there's just some lovely strategy here. It's light, it's super playable. I love the flip and write genre, and I think that Blue Orange did a great job with Next Station London. That's really it. I mean, I've been playing a bunch of games, I've been having tons of fun. I'm just now starting my first run through the campaign of Critical Foundation that Hachette Games has released, and I am thrilled. I'm so excited I got my group together, and we are actually playing that later this afternoon. So I'm just playing a bunch of games, having a great time, and loving my December, and I hope you are too. All right, I will see you next month. Back to you.
Okay, and continuing on with the rest of the contributors, while we didn't see much from Shea and Kimberly this month, Amy and Maggie did do a run-through of the new Wingspan Asia expansion, which I gotta say, I think is the most ambitious thing that they have put out for Wingspan to date. And I certainly understand why Amy and Maggie say they would not play Wingspan as a two-player game without this new game changer. It looks very, very cool, and you might want to check it out. They did a great run-through of it. But that wasn't all. Ruel did a very, very special run-through with his wife, Michelle, appearing for the first time on the channel. The two of them had an incredibly charming run-through of Dog Park, which is just a very, very sweet game, all about taking your dogs for a walk. And if you're a dog lover like me and Jen, or Ruel and Michelle, it is one that is worth checking also. But we weren't done with Ruel either, because he had a very, very special solo run-through he did for a very special game called Heading Forward. And I think this is one of those games that kind of blurs the line between board games and art, because this is about recovering from traumatic brain injury, and the designer himself was somebody who went through this process in real life. And so he brought all his real-world experiences and turned it into what turns out to be a very interesting and compelling and very thematic game about day-to-day struggles and celebrating the little triumphs in life and trying to overcome adversity. This is an absolutely beautiful game, and Ruel really brought it to life. So I highly recommend you check out his run-through for Heading Forward. It was a good month for Ruel. And otherwise, folks, I think that's about it. So I should start talking about the 21 games that Jen and I played. Although, before I get going, you may have noticed in Shea and Kimberly's videos that there wasn't a lot of video because they were covering games that hadn't been on the channel. That's going to be the case for a lot of the games I'm about to talk about as well. So I just want to give a huge shout out to Board Game Geek for always being there for me. It's a very, very handy tool in a lot of ways, including it means that I'll have some pictures to show of a bunch of the games that Jen and I played. So I just want to say thank you to Scott and all of his team at Board Game Geek, and to all the people who take pictures of their games and upload them. This month, I could not have done the show without you all. Okay. So, without any further ado, let's get going. How about number 21, we talk a little bit about a universal truth. Now, do not get me wrong. Just because this came in at the top of my list doesn't mean this isn't a wonderful game. And it's basically got all the drawing room intrigue of a great Jane Austen novel in multi-use card form. In fact, very much like Glory to Rome. This game lets you use cards to, a card can represent you. You can play them to add more money to your dowry. You can play them to make more social connections in the elite of Victorian era London. You can play them to unlock special powers by becoming proficient in whisk or cricket or politics or poetry or all kinds of things. You can play them to target somebody who you would like to fall in love with you, which is your actual goal, and you can also play them to do affectionate acts for those people. Every one of your cards in this game can be used for multiple things. Plus, on top of that, every card has a cool special power in the middle that can be used. So, I don't think I've ever seen a game with as many cool special use combinatorial games. And then on top of that, it also features a very, very cool card drafting system to get these cards in your hand based on a rondelle, and I love rondelles. So why does this come in at the bottom of my list instead of at the top? Because it's really good? The only problem is those special powers I was talking about, quite a few of them can be really aggressive. When I say, backroom intrigue, I'm talking real skullduggery stuff. And that was the thing that broke Jen's in my heart. Now, the game comes with a lot of variants you can play. You can actually turn off most of the features and make this a game that you can play with anybody as like a nice gateway game. But I want to play it all with all the bells and whistles turned on. But unfortunately, that means turning on some really cutthroat elements that just didn't work for me and Jen. And it is for that reason that it comes at the bottom. If those special powers weren't quite so cutthroat, this probably would have made my top 5 of the month because it's so wonderful and thematic and engaging. But as it is, it comes in at number 21 of the month, A Universal Truth. Oh, and it's at this point I should go to number 20 on the list, but here's the deal, folks. I just found out that I made a terrible mistake. I totally missed a paragraph in the rules that radically changed the game, and I feel like I need to pull number 20 off the list. Go back to the table, play it again with Jen, because I think I'm going to like it quite a bit more. So, in a bit of an unprecedented turn of events, we're going to skip from number 21 to number 19 on the list, and I'll get back to the game in question in next month's roundup. Okay, let's continue on then to number 19, Time of Empires. And now, this one surprised the heck out of me. It's from Pearl Games, and it is a real-time civilization game along the lines of Through the Ages or Nations, where you are doing all the stuff. You're exploring, expanding, exploiting, and exterminating as you play through round after round with real historical people and events that will build up a civilization from antiquities to modern day. All the stuff you expect. We've seen it in a lot of games. What makes this one stand out? Real-time gameplay. And that shouldn't work, but it does, and it's brilliant. Through, Hourglass Workers, this worker placement game where we are doing everything I just talked about and expanding, making new inventions, increasing our empire, playing area control games, invading each other's territories, tearing stuff down, competing on all kinds of fronts. I love this game. I love it for its ambition and its scope, and I love that it seems to pull off the impossible. Because, normally, real-time games have to be clean and simple and elegant to work. Whereas this game is clean and simple and elegant, and yet we end up doing really big, cool, complex stuff during the real-time portions of the game. And I really appreciate it. The only reason it comes in so low, not surprisingly, if you watch the rest of this roundup, is it does feature a healthy dollop of, it'd be a real shame if that capital city of yours burned to the ground, wouldn't it? And, you weren't paying attention, and boom, I moved in, and at the end of the time period, you didn't have enough defenses, and I sack your capital, kind of stuff. It's interesting, this game probably comes closer to feeling like a real-time strategy war game like Warcraft or Command and Conquer than any other board game I've played, because in those games, if you're not paying attention, people can sneak up on you and take your stuff, and that can happen here because it's not stately and refined. Now, I should say, the game does come with turn-based rules, and those work really well. Also, I'm very impressed by them, but really, those are a way to teach how to play the game before you start playing real-time. Real-time is where it's at. It's brilliant, and if this game came with a co-op variant, it would be in my top 5 easily. If it came with a variant where it said, hey, you know what? We're in different land masses, and we can just, every round, we can set aside a certain number of our troops to say, I'm just going to send them overseas, and whoever sends the most overseas, there's a point skirmish, and we're not actually stealing and destroying and, tearing each other's sandcastles down. If there were a couple of ways this could have been a top 10 game of 2022 for me, easily, because the real-time mechanisms, the civilization building is very satisfying, really smartly done. Watch my run-through. Jen appears in the run-through. If you ever want to see if she's a real person, you can see her right there in the little tiny picture-in-picture. But those are the things that keep it low on the list for me, unfortunately. Interestingly, when we did our Jen jogs, Jen also does monthly rankings of all the games. She ranked this really high, and it made me remember, Jen loves Tigris and Euphrates too, because Jen has always been a little bit more comfortable with attacking and destroying than I am. And so she ranked it high. I rank it high, except for the fact that it's just not a good fit for me. So, number 19, The Time of Empires. Okay, let's move on to number 18, Holly jolly. Hey, folks, it's a new year. Happy New Year again. And it was Christmas time. Jen and I thought we'd play this very popular I've heard really good things about this little card drafting game set around a Christmas tree. And man, it works really well. It delivers from Ben Pinchback and Matt Riddle. I mean, very accomplished designers in their own right. What's a good picture that shows the whole tree? There's a picture that shows the tree. All right. At its heart, this is a game where every turn you're going to grab one card from a display of 3. That card has a numeric value. You are going to use that numeric value in combination with the numeric values of the 3 cards at the heart of the tree to come up with a specific number. Like, I can't quite see, these are very small, but 2 + 1 = 3. Okay, so I combine this card with that card, that's a 3, and that lets me get this Santa card, this decoration that has a picture of Santa. I should make this picture a bit bigger so that would help see. And so this is how you draft cards. You grab one of these cards, combine them with the center cards to be able to get the decoration cards or the present cards under the tree. And there's all kinds of different set collection stuff, special powers on the different cards, and it's very sharp. There's a little bit of push your luck because, sometimes sometimes you know what the presents are, sometimes you don't, and there are some lumps of coal that might show up in there and all of that. Charming, cute, but ultimately very lightweight. This is designed for families to play together at Christmas time. And it works great for that. I don't think it's something that Jen and I would necessarily want because it's a little bit too light for us. In the future, we'd probably go with Ugly Christmas Sweater. But we enjoyed our time, and it certainly felt very appropriate for the Yuletide spirit. Number 18, Holly Jolly. Okay. Then let's talk about number 17 on the list, my Lil Everdell. Okay, so this comes in low because of what it is, because it does what it sets out to do. It tries to take the rich, complex worker placement, tableau building, card combo gameplay of Everdell, one of the most popular, acclaimed, and successful games in recent years. It's gotten so many expansions, and the big box that just came out, the biggest big box of all time. Amazing. So it tries to capture all the feel of Everdell and scrunch it down into a game, for kids, the little ones. It's still a worker placement game, but the core worker placement is really simple. You send a worker out to get a twig or to get a card. You play the cards out there. There are 4 or 5 different types of cards. Ones that will give you special powers. Ones that will be our engine builders. Ones that give you in-game scoring opportunities. And it works. And quite frankly, I didn't expect that Jen and I would enjoy it at all, but we were really surprised. In spite of the fact that it's still probably a little bit more lightweight than we want, I would actually say this game is more complex than Ticket to Ride. And it's for that reason I don't quite understand. The box literally says it's for ages 6 and up. And if you go watch my final thoughts, I believe there's a version of this game that 6-year-olds could play. But there are certain cards you would have to take out because they're surprisingly complex. Over the course of this game, you're going to get a bunch of cards played. You might have 3 or 4 special powers you're juggling at any given time, and 2 unique in-game bonuses you're trying to chase after, and you're trying to do engine building as well. All this stuff can really pile up, and you can get a really complex game going on. And I think some of the cards are maybe a little bit too much. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't hang out with 6-year-olds. I haven't played games with 6-year-olds since I was 6 years old myself. So I might be getting it wrong, but it really felt to me like the game is beautiful. Absolutely wonderful to look at. Taking all the art of Everdell, which was already great from Tom Bosley, and making new versions of it where they're kid versions of all the characters and places and stuff. It's lovely. It's charming. And I would say it's about roughly the same depth level of a Ticket to Ride. And that surprised me. Still a little bit too light for me and Jen, but more going on than we thought. We enjoyed our time with it. Wasn't a keeper for us. And again, I would think it would work for 10-year-olds maybe 11-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 6-year-olds, I don't know. But I do not know about childhood cognitive development. So maybe I'm totally misguided. I'm sure that pretty much everybody covered this. So you can look at a few other channels. But at the end of the day, it comes in at number 17 for us because it is still a little bit too light. But oh my gosh, so charming, so beautiful. Really enjoyed our time with it. Okay, then let's move on to number 16, Spacecraft. Now, this is a cool little game all about, there's two halves to the game. Most turns, you have a token and you're moving around a 4x4, although I think it gets bigger at a higher player count, 5x5 grid of stacks of junk in a junkyard. And on your turn, you can move a certain number of steps and orthogonally, and wherever you land, you grab one of these pieces of junk. And the pieces of junk have different art, and they also have different weights. You put that junk in your trunk, in your wheelbarrow, and you can only carry so much weight. So eventually, you're running around trying to get the ideal things you need, but dealing with weight restrictions, maybe you can't afford to get two of the things you want because that would overweigh your barrel, and you'll have to make multiple trips. Because eventually, you're like, okay, I can't carry any more stuff around. I'm going to leave the junkyard. When you leave the junkyard, you have the opportunity to convert all the scraps you picked up and turn them into rocket parts. And the interesting thing is, the different types of scraps you have bought give you access to different columns. So if I've got some duct tape, that means, hey, if I use duct tape plus whatever else I grabbed, I could get stuff out of the duct tape column of things, where there's fuselages and booster rockets, because we're trying to make rockets to go to the moon, of course. And the interesting thing is, when you're basically doing all of this, this set collection, all this tile drafting through this cool little mini game, you're trying to plan for, right, okay, when I come out, I can only get two pieces at the most, and you're trying to build your rocket as fast as you can to try to hit certain public goals that everybody is chasing after. And then after you've done that, you've converted your junk. Maybe you don't use all, you save some junk for later, and then you go back in the junkyard, you try to collect more stuff. It's a good, solid little game. Another one I think would be great for families. Pretty easy to teach how to play the game. Honestly, I think this is going to be better for 6-year-olds than my Lil Everdell when it boils right down to it. Charming. The rockets you end up building are really quirky and odd shaped, and just fun. There's a sense of fun and whimsy about everything in this game, and we enjoyed it, but it's a little bit too lightweight for us. Although there's an interesting twist to it. The game has two different variants you can play that have to do with the different types of objective cards you're chasing. The advanced version of the game is whenever you come out of the junkyard and you start buying, turning your scrap into pieces, you can also lay claim in kind of a little area control game to the different scoring opportunities. And so the more somebody says, hey, I'm really going to try and score a lot of points on the getting red pieces for my ship, there's an interesting thing where you can push your luck too much. Because if I've got a lot of red pieces for my ship and I have put a couple of things on there, the more times somebody activates one of these bonus point things, the more valuable it gets. Until it's activated too many times, and then all of a sudden, those particular pieces become not worthless, but suddenly their drop in value significantly. So there's this really delicate balancing act. If somebody can see I'm getting a lot of red pieces, I don't want to tip my hat. I don't want to rush right out and make the red really valuable, because then it's just going to be very easy for somebody else to say, oh, they'll tank it because they don't have a lot of red and they don't want me to get all those points. So there's a really interesting kind of, how long can you afford to wait before you make your move thing? So that's the advanced way, but to me, that was a simple way to play. The more complex way to play is instead, there's a big collection of, hey, build with this combination of parts or that combination of parts, and there's like a constant flow of we're racing to complete individual mini objectives. And honestly, I think I like that one more, and I don't understand why they said that's the easier one, when in fact, it seemed like it was the more complex one to play. But either way, whichever one you play with, I still think this is a good gateway-style game if that's what you're looking for. It's not what we're looking for, which is why it comes in at number 16, Spacecraft. Okay, now let's move on to number 15, Dice Conquest. Now, this is a fast-playing, cooperative, dice-chucking fantasy monster battler, and it works really well. Jen and I enjoyed our time with it. Every time you play, you have a unique player with special powers that say, hey, if I activate 6s, I get to do this. If I activate things, odd numbers, I get to do that, whatever. and as you beat monsters, we take them and tuck them under our character cards to reveal that we have access to more and more special powers that we can start manipulating, which means we have different ways that we want to draft dice to activate them, to activate our special powers, to fight more monsters. Because every round, more monsters keep coming out until we get to the final big super boss monster. We're trying to level up as fast as we can to beat them. The interesting thing about the game is it comes with a full set of D&D style dice, a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, a D12, and a D20. I believe that's it. I believe it comes with 7 dice, a full set of them. And every round we roll all those dice. And then we just take turns grabbing them. And so I might be in a desperate strait. On my turn, I need to grab a 3 to put it on this monster because we can only put odd numbers and we can't put numbers over 7. So I need a 3 or a 5. That's the only thing I put here. And if we can put that on there, we beat this monster. Here's the problem. We just rolled. We got a 3. It was on our D20. That is such a huge waste of a D20 because that D20 could do 20 points of damage or 15 points of damage if we re-roll it and hit it somewhere else. But we need that 3 right now. Are we going to waste that D3 to put it on this monster and finish it and unlock that special power? Maybe, but then we're not going to get that D20 back until next round, and we might be in real trouble down the road because obviously there's special powers about re-rolling and setting dice and all the kinds of stuff you would expect. It's really clever. We were really surprised. We really liked it quite a bit. We had a fun time. It was nice and challenging, not too challenging, but a good fun time. Really simple. A great restaurant game is what my wife said. She could totally see, because it is just literally a deck of cards, 7 dice, and each player has a card that is a little life hit point tracker for each player. Yeah, we liked it. I would, if this game ever got an expansion, I would love to come back to it because I'd love to see some more complex stuff. Because the stuff that's there is nice, but it's fairly simple and straightforward, which makes the whole game, again, it's a gateway style game. Honestly, I think the reason this exists is to sell sets. The dice were beautiful. They were absolutely gorgeous looking, lovely marbled dice. I think it's to sell these sets of D&D sets of dice to encourage people to try to play D&D dice more. And it just happened to have a fun game with it too. A little bit lightweight for me and Jen to keep playing over and over again. I know it's a real repeating concept, but we did really enjoy it. I'd happily play it again. Not necessarily keep it for us, but I want to keep an eye on this. If there's ever an expansion that adds some more stuff, I could see wanting to come back to number 15, Dice Conquest. Or if I had friends who love fantasy stuff and just wanted to play a fun, fast little game, really good stuff. Okay, let's move on to number 14 now. Dominion Allies. Okay, which I was certainly excited to try. I have not played a new expansion of Dominion since... Was the last one Menagerie? I think so. I think that's right. And I really loved Menagerie. Menagerie is probably one of my favorite expansions of all time. And I was certainly excited going in. Let's see, what kind of pictures of stuff do we have to show here? Hey, there's a bunch of cards. That'll do. It's a bunch of cards, although they're very tiny. Oh, there they go. Okay. Or they're in a foreign language, but that's okay. It's Dominion, folks. There's a bunch of cards. I think 30 or so new types of cards. So... I'm not going to explain how Dominion works. I assume everybody knows. People just want to know, okay, what does Allies do new? They do a few things. The most important one is the allies themselves. And it's my favorite thing about the expansion. Every time you play, you grab a different random ally from, I think there's like 12 or 14 different allies. It's a common resource for everybody. And you use Dominion coins to keep track of favors. Everybody starts with a certain number of favors. Anytime you want on your turn, you can spend those coins to activate this universal action that affects everybody. And they're all cool Dominion-style actions that are very powerful and can really change up the feel of the game in meaningful ways. And in addition to that, several of the new cards that you can buy in the market will allow you to accumulate more of these favor coins that you could then use to activate the allies. That's the core thing. It is great. I loved everything about it. We played a couple different games, tried a few different, I looked at a bunch of allies. Seems that's really awesome. They were right to put that on the box cover. It's the coolest thing about it. Next cool thing is, I forget, I think there were 3 or 4 market decks that, this isn't the first time we've seen this where, hey, you know what? All the cards in this particular stack aren't the same. As you buy more cards, you get to more expensive, more powerful ones deeper in the deck. We've seen this before, but this game really tweaks it up a bit, because for every one of those cards that belongs, I mean, there's a deck for villagers where you start out, oh, it's a peasant, and then it's a merchant, and then it's the sheriff, and then it's the, I forget what, and there's like one for war. It starts with a fort, and then it becomes a cannon, and then it becomes, so you can, the more of them you buy, or all players buy, the more they level up. But the thing is, every one of these cards has an, I forget what the word is, a rotate or update function, that when you use these cards, you can pick those stacks and say, hey, you know what? All the current level 1s, bury them at the bottom. I want to go straight to the level 2s. And then the next time I play, I want to go straight to the level 3s. So you don't have to wait and dig all the way through them. You can get to those more powerful things very quickly. Now, this is cool. It creates a more dynamic and constantly changing market than we've ever seen in Dominion, quite frankly, and that's a neat idea. I liked it in theory. In practice, it could be kind of frustrating, though, because, man, I'm finally to the point. Yes, I'm finally to the point where I'm going to be able to buy that card. Yeah, I got the cards. I just got to wait for my turn to come around. And then on your turn, you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to modify that deck. And the card I wanted to buy just disappeared. And now it's a different card that I don't want or I can't buy. And that's never happened in Dominion. Or at least not, maybe there's some special effect that says, oh yeah, you wanted to buy that thing. I removed it from the game and replaced it with something else. And it happens a lot. And honestly, my least favorite thing about Allies is this feels like the most aggressive and cutthroat expansion since going all the way back to Intrigue. Because there are several just straight out attacky attack cards like Barbarians and stuff like that. It seems like there's a higher percentage of attack cards than we've seen in other recent expansions. And then this really cool idea can be used inadvertently to where you could really mess up your opponent without even realizing it. So it's kind of, I mean, that's cool. But it can be frustrating, and my wife found that very frustrating. And then the other thing is there's a whole bunch of new cards, new ongoing effect cards and all of that, new treasure cards, and a lot of them focus on choice. Do this or this or this or this or this or this. It really felt like sometimes we were overloaded with choices in this game. Really, we could do this or that or the other, and I've got 3 of those? Yeah! I don't think Jen has ever come closer to melting down than when playing with the more choices preset, which was the first time we played it. And so they were all fine, but a little of that goes a long way. So at the end of the day, Dominion Allies comes in at number 14. It's a keeper, but mostly it's for the allies. I love the allies. I kind of love the multi-tier stacks. Those are neat. But the mainline cards, there weren't really many that say, oh wow, I love these main cards too. So overall, it was pretty nice. I enjoyed it. Not my favorite by a long shot, Dominion Allies. Okay, then let's move on to number 13. Monolyth. Now this is a game just kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think there'd been any real advance notice about it. Cool mini or not, just started sending out to reviewers. I got a copy of it, and we sat down and played it. And from designer Phil Walker Harding, and it's very nice. But I mean, geez, they've done nothing to try to promote this game. Look, there are no decent pictures of it on Board Game Geek. Just a few fan-made pictures. Let me go on ahead and show one that kind of shows stuff. Okay, so there's a picture of the game. Thanks to Eric Martin. Apparently Eric has a very beat up table he plays on. Anyway, I would have loved to seen some more fancy pictures I could show of the game, but this will get the job done. This is a polyomino game, but it is a 3-dimensional polyomino game because the polyomino pieces that come in all kinds of shapes that seem very, very similar to traditional Tetris fans can be stacked upwards in addition to spread out left and right. And in fact, we are building on very, very tiny little 4x4 grids. So ultimately, the game is over once one player has created a perfect cube by laying all these things down, but also building upwards. And it's sharp. The presentation of the game is lovely. All the polyomino pieces, I don't know if you can quite tell in this picture, are there any ones that show it a little bit better, have these wonderful little etched runes on them that look really, really nice. And there's a million... The interesting thing about the game is, I mean, this is not the first time we've seen polyomino games. This is not the first time we've seen stackable 3D cube making polyomino games. But what's really interesting about this game is you have the opportunity to grab these score chits that are on this central board. And as soon as you grab one, you install it on one of the 4 sides of your little player board. And what that means is at the end of the game, you will score that many points if that side of your final cube does whatever needs to be done. Based on what you chose, and I think that's cool. What is it? It's that in this picture right here, somebody put a 14. That means they are going to have 14 of one color on that side of the cube before it's done. And you can see on the other side, they've tried to put an 11. They're trying to put 14 of one color, 11 of another color on the other side, and that's a really cool puzzle. Very fun. And here's the deal, Jen loved this game. And I thought it was very cool too. My only problem with it is the reason it comes in so high at 13 is because it's a pure abstract game. And really at the end of the day, I'd rather be playing thematic Euros. But if I loved abstracts more, this would be a top 10 of the month. It'd be a top 5 even, because Phil Walker Harding, he does great tile laying games. He's Mr. Barron Park, and taking it into 3 dimensions, but with this really cool push your luck, because you want to grab those tokens as fast as you can so you can get the big points, but then you've got to commit, and trying to make sure you've got the right number of colors on each side is mucho challenging and very, very fun and puzzly. So if you like abstract games, or if you just like really wonderful productions of 3-dimensional, if you want to build a Rubik's Cube out of Tetris pieces that looks lovely and is very puzzly, you might want to check out number 13 of the month, Monolyth. Okay. Then let's go on to number 12 of the month, Wayfarers of the South Tigris. And I suspect this is the one that's going to give me the most grief online. People are going, what? Why isn't this here in your top 3? It's fantastic. Folks, it is fantastic. It's the latest from Sam McDonald and Shem Phillips of Garp Hill Games. It's the beginning of the new trilogy after we had the North Seas trilogy and the West Kingdoms trilogy. Now we're going to have the South Tigris trilogy. And like most of all the games that have come before, it is super sharp, a wonderful, fun collections of Euro mechanisms that really makes you, approach things in new and different ways. I love so many things about this game. I love the shared worker pool where we're constantly, through our actions, creating opportunities for other people to get workers that we give up. I love the fact that there are dice worker placement in this game too, but we can reprogram die faces to have different special powers. I love the race for bonus points I love almost everything about this game. In fact, this game could have been, honestly, my game of the month, and it could have made my top 10 games of the year, except for one thing. One of the elements we have in this game, this game overflows with opportunities to trigger all kinds of really cool combo actions where you get all these little baby bonuses that you can use in different ways to set yourself up for future combos. One of the baby bonuses is you can deploy your little influence tokens, which are these little asterisk-looking tokens. Now, the main use for them is to deploy them on the guilds, because then that means we can use the guilds to activate special powers when we need them to manipulate dice and do stuff. Or there's also an area control thing for having your influence on the guilds. That's all great. Love it. But you will also put in situations sometimes where you can put them on the cards. And this is a card drafting game where if you can identify a card I am desperate to grab because I need it for my engine that I'm building. It's the perfect one. I've waited half the game to get it. And you get the opportunity to put your influence token out. You put that on the card I want. And what that means now is if I want to get that card now has a tax on it, and I have to pay taxes to you. I have to pay everything I had to, and these cards are expensive. They're already hard to get, and now you've made it just a little bit harder just to bleed me. And the thing is, this little bonus is one of the most common bonuses you will see in the game. It just keeps coming up over and over and over again. And every time we got this, we'd have to say, oh, wait, let me try and figure out what hurts you the most. What do you want the worst? What do you want so bad? Oh, I think you want that one. Okay, I'll put it there. And you're like, okay, fine. Great. There's nothing fun about this. It totally breaks the flow of the game. Jen and I got to the point where we would say, I've got another one of these. Could you just tell me what you want so I don't have to spend 3 minutes figuring it out? And Jen would say, oh, it's this one. Okay, boom, there. You now have to pay me a coin when you want to get that thing. And I hated this so much. it serves no purpose. It slows down the game. It's, just spiteful taxation of your opponents for no good reason. It just is completely inconsistent with any other element of the game. And the game already shows, hey, there's really cool things we can do with this that are fun and interesting and engaging, or there's these dick moves that we can do with them that just keep coming up over and over again. And that killed the game for me. It breaks my heart because if it weren't for that one decision, and it would be so easy to house rule. I posted about this in my final thoughts, and people said, well, you could do this or this or this or this. Yeah, I could. Or the designers could, because, hey, you know what? I'll just go and play a game where I'm not constantly asked to evaluate how can I hurt my wife the most, because that's fun for some reason. I don't understand why that influence taxation of other players is there. If it weren't for that, this would have made my top 10 games of the year. But as it is, it comes in at number 12 on the list. The Wayfarers Soft Tigris. And again, folks, I have to remember, I'm a super Care Bear. Most people think it's not that big a deal. And they're probably right. I may be too overly sensitive to it, but for me, it was a game killer for Wayfarers. Okay, let's go on to number 11 on the list, Lacrimosa, which is a brilliant game, all about the after the death of Mozart. Sorry, just a second. My throat is quite dry. I'm still sick. Excuse me. Thank you. That helps. My honey water from my honey is still warm. Let me get one more sip of that, actually. Okay. So, Lacrimosa is all about, after the death of Mozart, he had his great Lacrimosa, one of his requiems, unfinished. And so we are his former patrons who are trying to hire the best composers to finish it, to finish our friend's work, but also to increase our own glory, of course, because that's what we do in Euros. We chase glory. Fortune glory, kid, in the form of economic machinations. That's Euros. Anyway, though. So there's an interesting twist to this, though, because the widow of Mozart is trying to write a memoir. And so we are splitting our time between investing in current day composers to do kind of this weird proxy battle area control on 1/3 of the board that represents the sheet music of the Lacrimosa, which is a really interesting area control game, really unusual, where we're kind of investing in the composers who maybe will become the leads, and therefore we score points off of them. Kind of like almost a stock dividend kind of thing. So we're trying to do that in the present, but we're also meeting with the widow and playing cards to share with her memories of Mozart, of, hey, that time that I sponsored him traveling to Vienna, or that time that I bought his concerto and I put it on, or whatever. Because the theme of this game is every time you play a card, well, interestingly, you have a hand of cards. Every turn you're going to play 2 cards. One, you activate the top action. The other, you activate the bottom action. Now, the bottom action is always gather a resource you'll use in the next round, so it's future planning. The top action is, what am I going to do right now? And those actions are get more cards to upgrade your deck and get more powerful actions later on with more variety and flexibility. Or move the Mozart token around the board to visit different cities and get bonuses there. Or do the thing I was just talking about in the present now, instead of in the past, work with composers to try to finish the unfinished work. And so every turn you're going to play one of these cards, you're only going to play a few cards over the course of the game. You get a lot done in a very short time in terms of the number of actions you do. And it's a brilliant design. This is not the first time, nor the only time in 2022 we saw a really great Euro where, hey, I play the top action of one card and the bottom action of another card. Of course, that's been a real mainstay ever since Gloomhaven did it a few years ago, right? And it works wonderfully here. I love the mechanisms of this game. Even the area control game, which is usually kind of a turnoff, it's such a weird, interesting proxy battle instead of a straight up battle. I found that engaging as well. My only complaint, the thing that keeps this out of my top 5, is the theme. And this is something I think vast majority of people won't care about. But I am a Euro theme aficionado, and I want my theme to work, and the theme doesn't work here. Because you can literally earn money in the present by working with the composers, and then spend that money 20 years ago to sponsor Mozart moving from one place to another. And I guess you could say, oh, this is just an abstraction of how the super rich are so disconnected from their fortunes that money is meaningless. I guess, but for me, it was a real disconnect. I love the theme of, revisiting our memories and, and using that to help the widow while also focusing on, but to me, the theme and the mechanisms really clashed and really kind of took me out of it. I can say my wife didn't care about that at all, and I think most people won't care about it. So if you're like, oh, theme is nice just to set the stage, but I don't really care that much about it once the Euro economic machinations get going, then you're going to love it. You're probably going to love it. But for me, I continue to care about theme, and I was a little let down by how it didn't really quite gel, which is why Lacrimosa comes in for me at number 11. Okay, now let's move on to number 10. Holiday Hijinks. Episode 1, the Kringle Caper. Now, unfortunately, I can't show you much of anything. Are there any pictures here on Board Game Geek? Oh, it shows a few of the different holiday hijinks you can get. Here's what happens when you open the Kringle Caper. This is a micro game. You open it up. There are 18 cards. This is an escape room. The story is Santa has returned to the North Pole after he brought back cookies. And one of the cookies has been stolen. And we are elves trying to crack the case of who stole Santa's cookie. And so you're going to play through 18 cards of escape room style puzzly stuff. And it's really nicely done. Now, I should say it's definitely on the lower end, simpler, easier scale escape room stuff, which is maybe why Jen and I really enjoyed it. At no point did this game ever make us feel stupid and like, oh, why can we do it? And the interesting thing is, I should say, for people who don't like this game requires you use an app. Because once you think you've figured out a particular puzzle, I'm not going to tell you all the puzzles, but there's all kinds of escape room type puzzles. There's some I've seen before, some that were interesting twists, some I hadn't seen, but they were all well implemented, all fun and engaging. Again, a little bit on the easy side, good for a group, for a family. But the thing is, once you've figured out a given card, what you have to do is you have to go to the app and type in the word that would be the answer. One of the first ones requires you to know all the names of the reindeer. And one of the reindeer, you have to type their name in, and if you type the correct one in, you will, it'll say, hey, draw card 4 now, right? I'm not going to tell you what the puzzle is to figure out, whether it was Dasher or Donner or Blitzen or whatever, but you had to figure that out. And so you have to have a smartphone to be able to play it. But if you have that, it gives you an hour-long timer. Jen and I finished it. I think we finished it in like 38 minutes, and we felt pretty good. We only had to use one clue, and as soon as we were like, oh, of course. Oh, that was a smart one. You got us, game. We had a good time. It was the perfect Christmas Day caper. Now, at the end of the day, Jen and I think we're both kind of over escape rooms, but we have the full set. And after we played that, just said, okay, well, we're going to play the Valentine's Day one on Valentine's Day. My birthday's coming up. We're going to play the birthday one on that day. There's a 4th of July one. There's several of them. And it's lovely. It's charming. It's very nicely done. And it comes in at number 10 as a one-time play. And then you give it away as a gift. Makes a perfect Christmas gift. Number 10, Holiday Hijinks. Number 1, the Kringle Caper. Okay, then let's move on to number 9 on the list. Balada, which is bards recording epic heroes' journeys. This is a very sharp roll and write. I liked it quite a bit. It's not a roll and write, it's a flip and fill, because every round there are 3 decks. You draw a card from each of them. One of the decks tells you a landscape, whether it is mountains or forests or deserts. And the other 2 cards say, hey, what will you draw into the mountain or the forest or the desert? So you might say, oh, well, hey, a key and a monster and mountain shows up. So that means I've got to pick on my little sheet of paper that represents the hero's journey that I'm going to write an epic ballad about. On one of the mountains, I have to write either the monster or the sword. And after I do that, I know, well, hey, I've got 2 more mountains, and so who knows what we're going to call them. Everybody makes this same choice. It's a bingo style game. Everybody looks at that. Everybody makes their choice as best they can, and then we draw 3 more cards, and oh, now it's a desert, and it could be a princess and a key, and it's going to go in a desert. So of my remaining deserts, am I going to put a princess or a key there? Very simple, very easy to teach, but surprisingly crunchy. I was really impressed by this one. Honestly, I didn't expect it to be very interesting, but I found it incredibly engaging from start to finish. It's 2 halves. You start off with the first half, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure that, once you fill all the spaces in, you will then tell the story of your hero. Oh, my hero started out by finding a key and a sword. Then they fought a lowly level 1 monster. Now that's a huge waste of a sword. Yeah, because a sword could take out a level 5 monster. So you have to decide, am I going to save the sword or am I going to use it to beat the monster? If I don't use it, then the hero will take damage. But don't worry, because I'll let the hero came to a monster but ran because he didn't, and then came to a level 3 monster and ran some more because he wasn't quite ready. And then he did some more training and eventually found a fountain. So if I ran away from monsters and I took like 4 damage in that example, when I get to the fountain, I get to heal. And for all the healing I do, I get points. The same as if I'd wasted my sword to kill the monsters. So that's just a fun little example of, okay, depending on where I put my swords, depending on where I put my monsters, depending on where I put my fountains, depending on where I put my treasure chests, my princess, my dragon, and all the various things that we're going to place here, ultimately, and again, you can make plans. Okay, I'm going to put this sword here because I'm going to put it right for, because ultimately I want to put the boss right there because I need 2 swords to beat a boss, and I'll have this other sword, but then what if the boss can't be in that mountain, or when the boss eventually shows up, oh, you got to put a boss in a desert. Okay, I'll put a boss in the desert because I still have the chance of putting a warp in the mountain. And if I put the warp in the mountain, then I could warp the boss to the mountain so it would work perfectly as I'd planned it out. So every step of the way, you're making informed guesses about that may or may not work depending on what the cards will give you. The art of this game is lovely. The decisions are engaging and interesting. You actually play through 2 sides of the piece of paper. First, there's the daytime, and then there's the nighttime. And the damage you've taken carries over, and the sword you've earned carries over. And there's a bit more complexity. Keys can be used for different things. Swords can be used for different things. And I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. Jen thought it was okay. She thought it was a little bit too simple. And it's funny, too. Jen kind of got the impression I think is wrong. They said, well, it just seemed like all the choices were really obvious. And yet, so I just did the best I could with the choices that I made. And I'm like, well, so did I. That's what you do in every game. And the thing is, the choices were obvious. You and I did radically different things, and I won. So it wasn't, the choices weren't obvious because I made better choices than you because I won. And to me, it was very satisfying. Jen, I don't know why, she just couldn't quite see it. But to me, it was a nice, fun, thematic little thing. Definitely a filler. Takes about 10, maybe 15 minutes once you've got the gist of it, and just fun. A series of kind of tension-filled, well, okay, I can go for this. Oh, please, when that boss comes up, it's got to be desert. It's got to be desert. Yes! Okay, this is going to be an awesome ballad I'm about to sing in Balada, which comes in at number 9 on the list. Okay, then let's talk about number 8. Delicious. Now, this is a roll and write from Pencil First Game, Eduardo Baraf and Steve Finn. This is a group of people that I absolutely adore. I'm always happy to see what they're coming up with next. And this was a very, very sharp, again, not a roll and write because there's no dice. Instead, every round, 2 cards are going to be drawn from 2 different decks, the upper and the lower deck. And what happens is every player looks at these 2 cards, and each cards are going to have random, the cards represent vegetables, and random chips are drawn out of a bag that represent tools or fruits. And so, this is an entwined drafting game. Do I want the carrots and berries on the top, or do I want the broccoli and spade on the bottom? I've got to pick one. And then once I make that choice, and everybody makes that choice, I am then going to fill up my board. If I took something from the top, I have to put the carrots in my top containers, or on my bottom containers from the bottom. If I end up getting berries or fruits, I have to put them in the special fruit thing that works very different than all the vegetable stuff. If I do tools, I can put them anywhere, but I'm restricted to where the tools are. So, this is a game where you are trying to fill a bathtub and boots and a wheelbarrow and a suitcase and an actual planter box full of seeds to grow the best. And each one of these different things fills a different way. One of them, they all have to be the same. The other one has to be unique pairs. One of them, everything has to be unique. It's simple, it's clean, it's elegant, it's fast, and it is fun. I like this one quite a bit. Jen thought it was a little bit too lightweight for her. She's kind of gotten more into the habit of these more big, crunchy roll and writes that we've been seeing more and more of these days. But for me, oh man, this is such a wonderful, charming, relaxing, easy, laid back, simple to teach, fun to play, entwined drafting, flip and fill. And I liked it quite a bit. Number 8 on the list is delicious. Then let's go on to number 7, Exhibition, the 20th Century. From Corne van Morsel. Oh man, I was going to look up how to pronounce your name. I always say Corn. I know that's wrong. I think it's Corne. I ran out of time because I'm actually running out of time, folks. I got to speed up. But anyway, regardless, from a designer, publisher Koala Games, he's got a couple of co-designers. Jen, I like this one a lot. At its heart, this is a very simple, straightforward card drafting game. Where is an image showing the board set up? Right, there we go. There we go. That'll do. All righty. So there is a grid of cards that represent every year of the 20th century from 1900 to 1999. And they are put in a 3x5 grid, and at the top of each column, there are world locations for the different continents of the world, Asia, Africa, Europe, etc., etc. And on your turn, you have a blimp or a car or whatever, you have a little meeple, whatever column you're in, you pick one of the cards from that column, whatever region, whatever color that column is associated with, you then move to that column. That will be where you take your next card next turn. But in the meantime, whatever card you took, you then have to add to your little exhibition. And the exhibitions has rules. Everything has to be in ascending order. Once you put like a 1924, you can't put 1925 to the left of it, even if you want to. And there's other rules. One of the exhibitions has to be all on the same continent. One of the exhibitions, they have to be there can't be more than 10 years between them, stuff like that. And it is fun, it is puzzly, and every one of these cards is a real-world invention that happened in that particular nation and that particular year, and I love it. I mean, Jen and I were having as much fun playing the game as we were just reading the origin of all kinds of inventions that we just take for granted in our day-to-day lives. And it is sharp. Now, inevitably, there will come points where, I'm going to take a card that I can't play anywhere, or I don't want to play because it'll mess up what I'm actually trying to build in this particular exhibit. So up to 3 times you can put cards off into storage, which is just going to lose you points, but you will do that. And we are racing to fill things in while following all the cool, puzzly, restrictive rules for like ascending rules and matches and all kinds of stuff. It is great. It makes history come alive. It is a fun, elegant, smart design, and both Jen and I enjoyed it quite a bit. We are definitely getting into some of the most fun games we played this month, and Exhibition 20th Century definitely ranks pretty high at number 7. Liked it a lot. Okay, then let's go on to number 6, Moesteiro. Okay, this is from Tigris and from the design duo of Rolla and Costa. The roller coaster, I like to call them. I don't think anybody else calls them that. And this is a game where we are competing to contribute the most to building a great, wonderful, real-world basilica, I believe, in Portugal, if I recall correctly. And we're doing it by harvesting resources, calling upon the favors of rich nobles, and basically fulfilling resources to score points by building up the basilica. All standard stuff, pretty straightforward stuff. What's interesting about the game is we do it through dice, because every round we roll our dice and we take turns worker placing them. And this game reminds me a lot of a game I played many, many years ago called Alia Octa Est. One of the ways you could use dice worker placement in Alia Octa Est was that, hey, if you put a 6 down and then I go to the same area as you and I put a 3, I push your 6 to the right to make room for my 3. But then if somebody else puts a 6, they go to the right of my 6. So the lower the value and the weaker the die is, the quicker you get to go, and you push the bigger, more powerful dice further on. And now this takes that idea and makes it work really interestingly in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if I recall, different worker placement spots on the board where they all take that idea but do interesting stuff with them as we gather the resources to try to help build the local town, build the basilica, gather all the resources we need, get the special set collection decorations we can do, gather, the wood and all of that, and it works great. You have small dice and big dice that represent, regular workers who have to follow the rules, and the big dice can break the rules. Over the course of the game, you get more big dice, but then you start losing them. So there's a really interesting overall flow to the game. You can sacrifice points to manipulate the dice as you need. It works great, and it's just really sharp. Now, I loved the dice worker placement. This kind of reminds me of last year's Tealetum, a game that had a really wonderful and deep and really fresh, modern feeling core action selection mechanism, the dice pushing and bumping and all the stuff that we do, to drive a more traditional, hey, gather goods to fulfill recipes to score points. The second half of the game was okay. The first half of the game was amazing, and on the whole, both Jen and I very much enjoyed number 6, Moesteiro. Okay. Now, let's talk about number 5, the most far-out game we played this month, Precognition, which is set in a post-apocalypse future where humanity has been all but wiped out, although some members of humanity have mutated into super intelligent protectors of the regular humanity. And what we're trying to do is sail down a river to reach a safe haven where we can start rebuilding. And that's the theme, but honestly, this is a very abstract game. Strictly speaking, you're trying to collect little meeples that represent people. They're sick, you have to heal them, or they are in danger and you have to protect them as we sail further and further down the river and deal with different obstacles along the way. But the whole thing that drives this game is cards. Because every turn you have access to 4 cards, 2 of them in your hand and 2 of them face up in front of you. Of the 2 face up in front of you, 1 you will play for yourself, and 1 you will give to your opponent. And the same is true for the 2 cards in your hand. So you've got all these 4 cards. Of the 4 cards, you're going to play 1 of them. You're going to make your opponent to your left play 1 of them, and then you're going to give the other 2 cards that didn't get mixed up into all this to the opponent to your right. And then everybody reveals all the cards they chose. Hey, this is a card that my opponent gave me. This is the card I played. And now here's the deal. Because I know you have to give me one of those face-up cards, right? You're to my right. You're going to give me one of those cards. I can see, oh, there's a blue and a yellow. I've got a yellow. If you give me that yellow and I play this yellow, if I get a matching pair, I'll get double the resources out of this. So, do I think you're going to give me that yellow, or are you going to give me that blue? If you give me that blue, how's that going to combo with these 2 cards? You give me the yellow, okay, I'm going to take a chance. Because the other thing is, I think, oh yeah, you get bonus points if you hand out yellows. And so I know you are incentivized to give me the yellow, so I think that yellow is going to happen. I predict that's what you're going to do. I'm going to use some precognition. I'll play the yellow. I find out what you gave me the yellow. Boom, I have a huge turn. And the game is full to the brim of look to the neighbor to the left, look to the neighbor to the right, see what all their objectives are, what they get bonuses for, see what they're trying to collect for themselves, and start making plans. What am I going to give to them? What are they going to give to me? Because the other thing is, remember, 2 of those cards I'm going to give to the player to my right, those will become the face-up cards. The player to my right is going to have to give me one of those next turn. So if I'm thinking next turn, hey, if I give him these 2 greens, that means next turn he'll be forced to give me a green. And if I can get a green next turn, yes. So this game has layer upon layer of really hardcore planning, and I thought it was mind-expanding in the best way, and I loved it. My wife liked it, but this game, more than any other game I can think of in recent years, so forced us to pay attention to each other. And Jen tends not to do that. Jen just likes to focus on her own little garden and just do stuff. For her, it was a bit too much trying to double think what your opponent is going to do. But me, I love that kind of stuff. So for me, it ranks very high. For Jen, a little bit less. And combined, it comes in at number 5, Precognition. Okay, then let's go on to number 4, The Skulls of Sedlec, which is a game from Button Shy. And honestly, just the base game of Skulls of Sedlec would not have rated that high for me. It would not have made it into the top 4 space. But Jen and I played it with all the expansions turned on, and oh my goodness, it became a wonderful game of card drafting and pyramid building. On your turn, you're either going to draft a card that has 2 skulls that represent different members of society, or you're going to play a card into your growing pyramid, and you're trying to get certain types of skulls next to others. You want nobles to be above the peasants. You want merchants to be next to the peasants. You want pirates to be away from the merchants. All kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of rules. And when you play with all the expansions, it becomes a fiendishly engaging and fun puzzle, trying to draft with really strict rules and then trying to build on top of your tower. We liked this one a lot, and we think it's a total keeper if you get the additional expansions. With the base game, we thought it was a little bit too simple, very gateway. The rules weren't really engaging enough to keep our attention, but once you turn on all the other stuff, oh man, Skulls of Sedlec gets very, very special, and the whole game fits in a tiny little wallet, which is Button Shy's MO, which is why that comes in at number 4 of the month, Skulls of Sedlec, with all the expansions turned on. Alrighty, let's move on to number 3, Simplicity. Wow, this really surprised me. This made my top 10 hidden gems of 2022. Both Jen and I are super impressed by it. It is at its heart a very fast-playing SimCity meets King Domino style game. Every turn, you are going to place your worker to grab a tile. The further down the row, the more flexibility you get, the more powerful your move, but the more likely you will be last in turn order in the next round. Very King Domino. Works there, works here. Then you take the tile and you look at the symbol that was next to the tile, and that tells you where you can place the tile on the main board. And what you're trying to do is you're either trying to get pairs of your own buildings next to each other, or you're trying to join growing collections of the same type of building, whether they're your buildings or somebody else. And the thing is, you get 5 turns in this game. It's the ultimate filler. You get to make 5 choices, 5 drafts, 5 tiles, so every turn is incredibly deep and crunchy and so rich, and I was blown away by this, especially when played as a 2 or 3 player game. I have to say, I've only played as a 2 player game. As 2 or 3, each player plays 2 teams. And so you get to make you 2 choices, and at the end of the game, Knightia style, your worst team is going to be what's scoring. So really, in a 2-player game, you're making 10 choices. But I would love to play this as a higher player count game where, oh my gosh, okay, I can go for this pair for myself, and that would block somebody else from expanding, or I could try to get on this other suburb over here that seems like everybody's committing to, and so I'll undercut all their points. So which of these 2? Well, if I take this one, I'm more likely to be first next turn. I only get 5 of these choices. It's neat. My only complaint is the default rules, if lower player counts, has this little demolition thing that you have to use. If you're the last player, you get to destroy a tile, and that was unnecessarily cutthroat. Jen and I did not like that at all. I went on Board Game Geek, I asked the publisher designer, and they came up with a variant and said, well, hey, if you don't like that, it won't break the balance if you just want to do this instead. And so now with that, with my little Rahdo variant, it is excellent. It is a keeper. It's number 3 of the month. It does so much with so little. Such a hidden gem. Number 3, Simplicity. All right, number 2. I'm not going to spend much time on this. Everybody knows about Carnegie. I am very late to the party on this one, but I finally got a chance to play it. Very blown away by it. It just came in at number 10 in my top 10 games of the year. Everything that everyone has said is true. It is such a brilliant mix of mechanisms. Goes to show why Javier Georges is in my top 10 designers of all time. This just reinforces it. My only complaint about the game is that I would love to see more variety, more interesting ideas in the departments. As it is right, and as I understand it, there is an expansion that will be coming soon that adds a whole bunch more departments. And if that delivers on what I'm hoping, the only weakness of this game, there's not enough variety in the types of effects you get from departments, this might push even higher into my top 10 for 2022. But as it is, both Jen and I were really blown away. And also, I played as a solo game, and I was blown away by one of the most complex, interesting, intricate, and unique engine building games I've ever played. Number 2 on the list, Carnegie. And finally, folks, number 1, another game that made my top 10 shortlist for the year, Shapers of Gaia from WizKids Games. This has got to be, the best engine builder of 2022. One of the best engine builders I've ever built. In a nutshell, the core gameplay is very simple. On your turn, we are trying to rebuild Gaia after devastation. We come out of our vault. We've got our little characters who are moving around from spot to spot. And we are trying to bring back a flora and fauna. If on my turn I'm going to bring an animal back, there are several cards that represent different animals. I will pick one. I will put them in the little biome I'm in. I will spend the resources as necessary to do that. Alternatively, on my turn, I can have the helper robot move into an unbuilt space, and they will build a new type of biome so that we could then later on follow on and put more animals in those spaces. And over the course of the game, the world gets revamped and more animals show up. The important thing is every time I bring a new animal into the world, I hold on to the card for that animal and I add it to one of 3 different engines I am building every step of the way. And then I activate that card and every other card in that engine. So if I got a Crystal Cave card, I add it to my other Crystal Cave cards and I activate all of them in any order. So when you are drafting these cards, both because they represent the different types of animals you want to put on the board, because there are high-level objectives of getting certain carnivores in positions or omnivores or herbivores or whatever, but I'm trying to get the right animal for that, but I'm also trying to get the right animal to add to one of my engines so I can run that engine and get a huge payday. This game has a very simple rule set, and yet it is one of the richest and deepest engine builders we have played in a long time. It's also gorgeous. It also has an incredibly deep and robust, unique player power system where everybody as we get more animals on the planet, we unlock more and more special powers, almost to the point where we're playing different games. We score things differently. There's great representation in the game. The presentation is fantastic. This game is absolutely phenomenal. Like I said, it made my top 10 of the year, Shapers of Gaia, and it was my number 1 game we played in December. And phew, that was my 21 games, and I think with Shea and Kimberly, that's like 31 games, folks, you just got to hear about. Hopefully, amongst all of those, that's like a game for every day of the month. Something interesting might have popped onto your radar, and if so, hey, let me know down in the comments. But anyway, we have made it once more. And so, once more, in closing, I have to say thank you to all my contributors. Even when they take the month off, they still make the channel a better place. And also, thank you to sponsor of the show, Fun Again Games. And finally, as always, thanks to all of these people right here, the people who actually keep Rahdo running by backing me on Patreon or via Twitch subscriptions or YouTube memberships. Thank you all so much. I cannot say how much it means to me and everybody else. My wife, it's such a joy, and we're looking forward to bringing you more stuff in the new year. But folks, you know how these roundups end. There are some very high-level special backers who get a special thanks in the form of a shout-out. So let's get to it. Thanks, Dennis Inty and Caitlin Albert, Dave Salvatore, Selma Lee, Jay Huber, Heather Darian, Mike Bloom, Cameron Zafar. Thank you. Marlon Cruz, Marilyn, Sharon Laubach, Jeff Glazen, Stacy Lee, Eric Z, Martin Griffin, Graham Wallace, Lex, Dan Halligan. You are all the best people. Dr. Fu, Charles Hill, Chris Steele, Blake Wilson, Ben, CK Mom, Cobra Misfit, Steve Ercolini, Jeremy Schroeder Hansen, and Cheryl Howard. I lied earlier. You're actually the best people. You're my favorites. And finally, Kisa Griffin, Denmawa, 2030 CE, Jerry Reese, Hans Peter Back, Victory BHG, Mom Gamer, Paul Martinez, Davey Davis, Aista Samuelonis, Adrian Dawn, Chris Arnold, Tom Coed, and Marianne Gonzalez. Everybody, give a thanks wherever you are to all those people because they help make this show run, as do the rest of them. All right, folks, that's it. Another roundup is done, and I'm exhausted. Subscribe if you haven't. Click on another thing, but I need a throat lozenge. No, not surprisingly. That was a lot. Are you still here? You just want to watch me suck on this thing? Oh, they're like butterscotch. These things are amazing.